Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about connected stories. We're going to start by talking about what are connected stories, and then we're going to take a brief look at a couple examples so you can visualize how to use this in your classroom. So first off, connected stories are exactly like they sound. They are a network of stories that are all connected together through connection. So for example, students add to the board, and then any response needs to be directly connecting back to a response that is already on the board. You can do this in two ways. You can help build class community, and you can also help use this for analyzing content and making connections with content. Some benefits for using connected stories with your students are, first of all, they're student driven. So the students are the ones creating the content, using that deeper level of thinking to help them analyze the content that they are learning or to help them build those relationships with their students. And last but not least, for the teacher, there's very little prep work. You create a Lucid Spark board, you push it out to all of your students, they join the board, then you can either pick a student to add the first story to the board, or you as the teacher can add the first topic or story to the board. And then all you have to do as the teacher is watch as the connections grow and help to guide students in the classroom as they're doing it. Okay, so the first one we're going to go over is building community in your classroom. So this is a really fun way to help students get to know each other in a quick 5-minute activity. You could do it as a self-start. You don't even need to do it as a class discussion, or you could also bring it into a class discussion as well. So as the teacher, you could pull out a shape or a sticky note. I'm going to start and just do the typical circles, and I'm going to pull out the originating thought into the center of my Lucid Spark board. Again, as a teacher, you could share your personal story, or you could take turns having each student start that connected story. So, Sally does today, Tom does tomorrow, and everybody gets a turn to kick off that connected story. So I'm just going to write whatever story I want. As the teacher, you could give parameters, but for the building community one, a lot of times I just like to leave it open for them to share something about their life, so then they can see all of the connections and how they are similar and have connections with the other students in their classroom. So I'm going to write the connection. I recently got a puppy. His name is Bruce, and I love him. But wow, are puppies a lot of work. So we have our originating story, and now anybody can pull off of the originating story to make a connection, or they can start pulling off of any of the other connections that get added to the board so you can watch it grow. So I'm going to go ahead and you can just kind of see how this could go as they were building connections in the classroom. Okay, so now you've seen what a connected story would look like as it starts. This would just be the beginning, and you'd have lots of students in there at the same time building and connecting. One of the biggest things I love is it just helps to build that community. So the student who brought this originating story, if they felt isolated, lonely, they don't have a lot of friends in the classroom, now they see that there are other kids who are experiencing the same things as them, and it allows the students to really just form a tight-knit community because they know that they have similarities with their classmates in their class. Okay, so this was the building community example. Now we're going to go ahead to the next example. This example is for ELA. So you might do a connected story for a book or chapter reflection. So this is an example of The Giver, and the students are prompted with making connections to self, text, and the world. So very similar process to the building community example, except for this one, the teacher is posing a specific topic to start with. So some examples are, the teacher could start with a quote from the story that the students then build upon. They could start with a student connection. So this is where you could pick a student to start that board and have the student make a connection with either the chapter or the book, and then the students can build off of that. You could also start with a main event from the chapter. You could also pose a question on which one do you think is the most important event, and then one student can post, and then everybody can either agree or disagree, and then they could build that connection from there. You could start with just a character for a character analysis. So if we start with Jonas, then everybody can start pulling out either facts about Jonas, connections to Jonas, and really start to build that character analysis together collaboratively as a class. You could start with a lesson learned. So a lot of books we read have lessons that they're trying to deliver to the audience. So you could start with putting out an important lesson that you think was learned, and then students could agree, disagree, or build those connections. Or you could also have several people put out what they think the most important event or lesson learned from the story was, and then everybody can continue building off of that with that agree or disagree. And then you could also start with the setting. So you could do a setting analysis. So for example, this one started in a futuristic dystopian or utopian society. And then people could be pulling that off to make connections to the real world or to other texts that have that similar setting. So those are a couple different ways that you could start off an ELA connected story. Let's take a look now at some math connections. So here are 3 different ways that you could start your math connections. So you could start by posing a real world connection and then having the students build off of that. So this, in the first example, the teacher selected a student to start. They put theirs on the board. They talked about how they have pizza nights at their house and their family has 4 people. And so they had to use fractions in order to determine how much pizza each person got. You could, in the second example, you could start by connecting with other math topics. So again, you could have a student start, they put their first connection on the board, and then everybody builds off of that. So this student started off by saying, we just started learning about multiplication. This reminds me of when we would practice skip counting in 2nd grade. And then this would spur all of those other connections to other math topics related to multiplication. And then finally, you could also have them make connections with the other classes and the things that they're learning outside of math class. So in this example, the student was connecting the fact that they're learning about graphing in math class with the graphing that they were studying in social studies, where they were analyzing which states had the most densely populated cities. And in their math class, they were analyzing which states have the coldest temperatures throughout the year. So then again, you start with that initiating story, and then everybody is going to build those connections off of either the originating or the other topics. Here you can see in our science stories, the first example talks about how the science we are learning impacts our life. So one of the students pulls out one thing that they're learning and how they think it impacts our life. So we're learning about heat energy, radiation, convection, and induction. My parents use this almost every day when they cook dinner. So then the next student added on to that saying, this reminds me of what we learned about in chemistry. When I eat the food my mom makes, my body undergoes a chemical reaction to turn that food into energy. So you can see one student pulls out an impact on our life and another student builds upon that. So 2 different things talking about heat energy and food energy, but both connected to energy and eating and cooking and different things like that. And then the second example, how has How has the science we are learning impacted our society? So again, you could pose that question as the teacher, and a student can come out with an originating thought or story, or you could have multiple students start and then you could build off multiple trees. So this one, they said, I appreciate the work of Benjamin Franklin, risking his life by flying a kite with a metal key to prove electricity existed. And then the student added that this was not a great, smart idea for Benjamin Franklin, and luckily he survived. Then you can see the next student added on to that. This paved the way for Thomas Edison to invent the light bulb, which then another student added on to that. The invention of the light bulb had a huge impact on human society. And then finally, one of those benefits is the ability to increase the length of the workday. I'm not sure we all think that is a benefit. So what you can see here are different ways where you can see students are building upon that originating story. And then the final connection we have is our social studies. This one is broken up a little bit differently. The teacher did some prep work. They were focusing on the causes of World War II. And so they actually divided up several groups. So they had 4 groups. You only see 2 here. So they started with the group tag and the first originating cause. Group 1 was assigned the Treaty of Versailles, and Group 2 was assigned the economic downturn. And then you can see, then the students each took turns building upon each other. So the Germans wanted revenge, student 1 added to the board, and then the student 2 read the first 2 and added on. Same thing, student 3 read everything that came before it and added on. And then same thing, student 4 continued adding on to that idea. So you can see how those causes are directly building out in order. Here you can notice that it doesn't always have to go in a linear pattern. Here they started in one direction, and then when we had the hyperinflation hitting Germany, we wrote that this helped to develop Hitler's early career. But then student 3's connection connected back to that hyperinflation. So you can also have offshoots that are connecting to any of these main ideas as well. You can also see in group 2, all 4 students went and then they continued going back. And so they continued that order with 1, 2, 3, 4. So each person was taking their turn to add on to the causes of World War II. Okay, so I can't wait to see what you can create for your connected stories. Don't forget to share your experiences and your student examples to social media using hashtag Lucid4EDU. And don't forget, I am here to help. If you ever have any questions or need any help, please feel free to email me anytime. Have fun making your connected stories and see you next time.